A delivery girl had solved a problem that 20 engineers had failed to solve. "If you're so smart, fix it now." They were shocked. "If you're as smart as you think you are, fix it now," shouted Michael Harrison, Tech Corp's chief technology officer, pointing to the red screens flashing across the control center. The system had completely failed 3 hours earlier, paralyzing dozens of customer companies. Kesha Williams, only 24, had only delivered lunch, which Michael had ordered through the app. Her cooler was still slung over her shoulder when she dared to comment on the error code she saw on the main screen. A comment that made all the engineers stop what they were doing and look at her as if she were speaking a foreign language. "This code indicates a problem with the data buffer," she said simply, placing the order on the table. The silence that followed was deafening. 20 engineers from top universities, some with six-figure salaries, were faced with a black delivery girl who had solved in seconds what they had been struggling with for hours. "Ha! You're kidding, right?" Michael laughed sarcastically, his voice thick with condescension. "Yeah, that's pretty funny," the other engineers chuckled, some shaking their heads in disdain. David Park, the senior engineer, crossed his arms and said, "Let's see how smart you are." Kesha stood still, her brown eyes calm in stark contrast to the chaos around her. "I can help you if you want," she said softly, adjusting the strap of her backpack. "But when you find out I'm right, and the system will work again exactly 2 minutes after you follow my advice. Remember this moment." Michael laughed loudly, deliberately. 2 minutes? Honey, this system has been down for 3 hours. We have a team of 20 experts trying to fix it. Do you really think a delivery girl is going to teach us anything?" Kesha smiled slightly, a smile that didn't reach her eyes but carried a weight that made some of the people present feel inexplicably uncomfortable. It was as if she was holding a secret too powerful to reveal until the right time. If this story of prejudice and underestimation touched your heart, be sure to subscribe to learn how a simple lunch delivery became the catalyst for a revolution no one will ever forget. Michael Harrison couldn't shake that moment. It had been 3 days since a black delivery girl had dared to correct him in front of his entire team. And the worst part was, she was right. The system returned to normal exactly 2 minutes after they followed her advice. But Michael wasn't one to let himself be humiliated by someone he considered an inferior being. With an MIT degree, 15 years of experience in tech, and a salary of $200,000 a year, he simply couldn't accept the fact that a lowly delivery girl knew something he didn't. "I got her name," David Park said, walking into Michael's office with a mischievous grin. "Kesha Williams, 24, works for 3 different delivery services, lives on the east side of town. Here's the kicker." David paused dramatically. "She dropped out of college in her junior year, studying computer science." Michael raised his eyebrows. "Interested? Dropped out? Why?" "Apparently she couldn't afford tuition. Low-income family, couldn't afford her education. Typical case of someone who dreams too high and doesn't have the structure to support her dreams." What Michael didn't know was that Kesha had been forced to drop out of college not because of a lack of ability, but because of a family tragedy. Her mother was diagnosed with cancer in her 3rd year of college, and Kesha had to choose between continuing her education or working to pay for her medical treatment. The choice was obvious. For 2 years, she worked 3 different jobs during the day and taught herself how to code in the early mornings. Her desk was a cardboard box in the room she shared with her mother, and her computer lab was a used laptop bought with borrowed money. Does she really think we're so incompetent that we can't fix something she apparently fixed? Michael continued, turning his chair to look out the 23rd floor window. Don't say that, Michael. She just had a lucky break. David laughed, sharing the same line of thinking. Exactly. I bet she memorized a few lines of code from the internet and now thinks she's an expert. Nothing more than beginner's luck. What they didn't know was that Kesha had developed a route optimization system for couriers at home that was more efficient than anything Tech Corp had created. She turned her need to survive into an opportunity to learn, creating algorithms that maximized her earnings and minimized her hours. The following Thursday, Michael decided it was time to put the brash delivery girl in her place. He called every delivery service in town and used his influence as a corporate client to make a special request. He wanted Kesha Williams blacklisted from delivering to Tech Corp. Allegations of inappropriate behavior and disrespect for customers. He lied to the executives. As the CTO of one of the largest companies in town, I cannot allow disrespectful employees to continue to provide service here. In less than 24 hours, Kesha had received 3 notices. Her accounts had been suspended on the 3 apps she used for work. No detailed explanation, no right of protection, no source of income. Sitting in her kitchen, looking at her mother's medical bills stacked on the counter, Kesha felt a mix of anger and determination she hadn't felt in a long time. Her hands shook slightly as she reread the suspension messages, but the shaking wasn't from fear. "What's wrong, honey?" Her mother Helen asked, trudging into the kitchen, still recovering from her latest chemotherapy treatment. "Nothing, Mom. Just a problem at work. I'll figure it out." Kesha hugged Helen gently, feeling the fragility of her body that had fought so hard to survive. "I'll fix it." That night, Kesha fired up her old laptop and started doing something she hadn't done in a long time. She started coding. But this time, it wasn't to optimize delivery routes or solve simple logic problems. This time, she was building something far more ambitious. Every line of code she wrote was steeped in years of humiliation, scornful looks, doors closed in her face. Michael Harrison had just awakened something in her he'd never imagined. The quiet anger of someone who'd been underestimated her entire life and was finally determined to prove her worth. For a moment, as she read the blocking messages, Kesha hung her head and felt the familiar weight of injustice. But anyone who knew her true story would know that she was simply gathering strength, like a storm that forms silently before it unleashes its full force. For the next 2 weeks, Kesha lived a double life. By day, she desperately looked for a new job, cleaning, waiting tables, anything to pay her mother's medical bills. By night, she transformed into someone else entirely, a determined programmer, building something that would change everything. What Michael Harrison didn't know was that his attempt to destroy Kesha's life had created the perfect fuel for something much bigger. Every no she heard in job interviews, every pitying look from employers, every unpaid invoice became another line of code in the system she was developing. "Honey, you haven't been sleeping much," Helen said, watching Kesha feverishly type at 3 a.m. "What's this project?" "Something that's going to change our lives, Mom. Trust me." At Tech Corp, Michael was celebrating his victory over the annoying delivery girl. During a meeting with his team, he couldn't resist telling the story as a funny anecdote. "Remember that girl who dared to correct us last week?" Michael laughed, leaning against the conference table. "Well, let's just say she won't be bothering us anymore. I used my connections to get her banned from every delivery service in town." David Park burst out laughing. "Perfect. She needs to understand that there is a natural hierarchy. People like us don't tolerate abuse from people like her." What they didn't know was that Jennifer Chun, the team's senior Asian programmer, had been quietly recording the conversation on her phone. Jennifer had been the one to defend Kesha that fateful day, but she had been quickly silenced by her colleagues. Now, hearing Michael openly admit to ruining an innocent man's life, she felt she had to act. That evening, Jennifer did something that could cost her her job. She found Kesha through social media and sent her a private message. "Hi, Kesha. I'm Jennifer. I work at Tech Corporation. I was there the day you fixed our system problem. I need to tell you something about what Michael did. Can we talk?" When Kesha received the message, she was hesitant at first. It could be a trap. But something in the sincerity of Jennifer's words made her agree to meet at a nondescript downtown cafe. "He really did that?" Kesha asked incredulously, after listening to the recording of Michael admitting to sabotaging her career. "Worse. He brags about it," Jennifer replied, her eyes flashing with indignation. "Michael Harrison is a narcissist who can't stand being corrected by anyone, especially a black woman. He did this out of pure bruised ego." Jennifer handed her a piece of paper. "These are the contact details for all of Tech Corp's major corporate clients, companies that rely on our systems for mission-critical operations. If anyone can prove that Michael is making decisions based on personal bias rather than technical expertise." Kesha took the paper, her hands shaking. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." "Because I've been where you are," Jennifer sighed. 3 years ago, Michael tried to fire me after I corrected a mistake he made in an investor presentation. The only difference is that I had union protection and a lawyer. You're not so lucky, but maybe we can create our own justice. That night, Kesha was working with renewed energy. She wasn't just building a system anymore. She was building a trap. Her project had evolved into something far more ambitious, a security vulnerability analysis platform that could scan any corporate system and identify critical vulnerabilities in real time. But the real genius was what she discovered during her sleepless nights of research. Tech Corp's own systems contained dozens of critical vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities that Michael and his team of 20 engineers had failed to detect, but which she had fully documented. Over the next week, Kesha began implementing the first phase of her plan. Using the information Jennifer had provided, she created fake social media profiles and began reaching out to the CTOs and chief technology officers of Tech Corp's top clients. Her strategy was elegant in its simplicity. She offered free security audits to companies that relied on outsourced systems. Nothing illegal, nothing unethical, just a talented young woman offering her services to identify vulnerabilities that could put companies at risk. What these companies didn't know was that many of the vulnerabilities Kesha would find in their systems came directly from flaws in the products and services TechCorp provided. "How's the project going?" Helen asked one evening, watching her daughter finally relax after 2 weeks of hard work. "Better than I expected, Mom. A lot better." Kesha smiled, but there was something different about that smile. It was no longer the smile of a desperate young woman trying to survive. It was the smile of someone who had found her true power. At that same moment, across town, Michael Harrison received the first of many phone calls that would change his life forever. On the line was the Chief Technology Officer of Megacorp, one of TechCorp's largest clients. "Michael, we need to talk urgently. We've received an independent security report that shows critical vulnerabilities in all of the systems you've implemented for us. Vulnerabilities you assured us didn't exist." Michael felt a chill run down his spine. "There must be some kind of bug, Mr. Rodriguez. Our systems have passed all of our tests." The report is from a security expert named Kay Williams. "Do you know her?" The phone almost fell out of Michael's hands. Kay Williams. Kesha Williams, the delivery girl he'd destroyed, was back, and apparently she was no longer delivering food. "Michael, are you still there?" "Yes. Yes, I'll look into it immediately." Michael felt a slight tremor in his hands as he hung up. It wasn't fear that was causing the tremor. Not yet. It was a growing realization that maybe, just maybe, he'd seriously underestimated someone who should have been left alone. But Michael didn't yet know that this call was just the first in a carefully orchestrated series. Kesha wasn't just attacking a TechCorp client. She was plotting a systematic expose that would reveal years of technical malpractice, decisions based on prejudice, and incompetence masquerading as authority. While Michael was trying to figure out how a simple delivery girl had access to such detailed information about vulnerabilities that his own team hadn't discovered, Kesha was 3 steps ahead, implementing the second phase of the plan, which would turn his public humiliation into a lesson Michael Harrison would never forget. The moment he saw the name Kay Williams on his computer screen, Michael felt a twinge of something that might have been recognition, or perhaps even regret. But anyone who knew the true nature of justice knew that some wrongs were too big to be righted with a simple apology, and that sometimes the only language people like Michael understood was the language of consequences that could not be ignored. The following Monday, Michael Harrison walked into the office to find his secretary looking pale and with a pile of urgent messages on her desk. "Harrison, we need to talk," she said nervously. "We've had 12 contract cancellations in the last 24 hours, all for the same reason: critical security vulnerabilities identified by an independent audit." Michael felt the floor drop out from under his feet. The 12 contracts represented nearly 60% of TechCorp Tums's annual revenue. "What audit? Who authorized it?" "No one authorized it, sir. A consultant offered our clients free audits, and well, they accepted." The phone rang. It was Richard Goldman, CEO of Data Flow Industries, one of the company's largest clients. "Michael, I'm terminating our contract effective immediately. This Kay Williams found vulnerabilities you assured us didn't exist. Worse, I discovered that you knew about these flaws for months and didn't tell us." "Richard, there must be some misunderstanding." "The misunderstanding is trusting you. This consultant showed us 6 months of system logs. You exposed us to catastrophic risks and lied about it." Michael hung up, his hands shaking. Kay Williams had access to Tech Corp's internal logs. How was that possible? The answer came in the form of an email. Jennifer Chun sent a company-wide email with the subject line, "Transparency and Integrity, a Necessary Conversation." Dear colleagues, as an employee of this company for 5 years, I feel compelled to share information that impacts our professional integrity. The email detailed how Michael had used his position to sabotage Kesha's career out of pure prejudice, including a recording of a meeting where he bragged about ruining her life. Kesha Williams exposed a critical issue in our systems in seconds. Our response was to humiliate her and then destroy her livelihood. Meanwhile, the same vulnerabilities she pointed out have cost us millions in security breaches over the past several months. Within 15 minutes, the email was company-wide. Within 30 minutes, it was on social media. Within an hour, every tech website in town was covering the story. Michael stormed into Jennifer's office. "You're fired. How dare you defame me like that?" "Actually," said a calm voice from the doorway, "she's protected from discrimination by labor laws, and you have a serious problem." It was Kesha, accompanied by an attorney and 2 reporters. She was carrying a laptop and a folder of documents. "Surprise," she said with a calm smile. "I'm here to conduct that security audit you insisted I couldn't do." Michael choked. You can't be here. Security, call security." "I didn't barge in," Kesha replied calmly. "I was officially hired by Tech Corp's board to conduct a full audit following revelations of systemic malpractice. Apparently, when 12 major customers cancel their contracts on the same day, shareholders start asking awkward questions." The reporters turned on their cameras. One of them asked, This is a misunderstanding. "I can show you exactly what I found in Tech Corp's systems. 23 critical vulnerabilities that should have been patched months ago. Vulnerabilities that cost the company's customers at least $4 million in losses. The screen displayed detailed reports, error codes, system logs, incontrovertible evidence of technical malpractice. The interesting part," Kesha continued, "is that these vulnerabilities were easily identifiable. Any competent programmer would have spotted them during a basic, routine check." Michael felt the blood drain from his face. "Our systems passed all checks." "Your checks were cursory and incompetent," Kesha said, perfectly calm. "You prioritized speed of deployment over actual security. The exact same decision would be made by someone more concerned with protecting their ego than doing their job properly." Kesha's lawyer intervened. "Mr. Harrison, my client is considering filing suits for defamation, intentional interference with contractual relations, and racial discrimination. The evidence is substantial, and the clients who suffered from tech negligence," the second journalist added, "are organizing a class action lawsuit against Tech Corp. Estimates of damages already exceed $8 million. Michael slumped in his chair. In less than a week, he had lost most of his clients, the trust of his team, and now faced lawsuits that could destroy not only his career, but his financial stability. "Why?" he asked, looking at Kesha with a mixture of despair and something that might have been belated recognition. "You could have just moved on." Kesha closed her laptop and looked him straight in the eye. "Because someone had to show that competence has no color, class, or background. And because people like you only learn when the consequences can't be ignored." Walking out of the room, followed by reporters and Jennifer, who had just quit to join the consulting firm Kesha had founded, Michael was left alone in his office, finally realizing that he had underestimated far more than a simple delivery girl. He had underestimated the power of someone who turned every instance of discrimination into fuel for a revenge as elegant as it was devastating. 6 months later, Kesha Williams sat in her office on the 21st floor of a corporate building, looking out at the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. Her company, Secure Code Solutions, had grown from an idea born out of injustice to one of the most respected cybersecurity firms in the country. "We achieved our goals," said Jennifer Chun, now the company's chief operating officer, as she walked into the room with a stack of proposals. 3 of them were former Tech Corp clients who approached us specifically after seeing our work. Kesha smiled, but it wasn't the smile of vengeful satisfaction. It was the smile of a man who had turned his pain into purpose, his humiliation into motivation to build something greater than anyone could imagine. Quote, Kesha asked, even though she already knew the answer. Michael got laid off last week. Tech Corp has lost 80% of its corporate clients in the last 6 months. They're considering bankruptcy. Jennifer paused. He's suing former clients for breach of contract, but no one takes him seriously. I hear he's a freelance consultant, but no one trusts him, Kesha finished. It's interesting how reputations work, isn't it? It takes years to build, seconds to destroy. In fact, Michael Harrison learned the hard way that competence is not a matter of degree or skin color. After being fired from Tech Corp, he was desperate to rebuild his career. But Jennifer's post of him admitting to sabotaging Ha out of prejudice went viral in the tech community. Companies that had once vied for his services now shunned any association with his name. His former colleagues who had once laughed at his jokes about prejudice now pretended not to recognize him at professional events. David Park even sent a public message distancing himself from Michael's discriminatory views. "Hold on," said Helen, Kesha's mother, as she walked into the office with a tray of coffee. Her health has improved dramatically because they can afford better medical care. This man tried to destroy you because he thought you weren't worthy of being on his level. Now you're 3 levels above him. Kesha hugged her mother tenderly. It's not about levels, Mom. It's about proving that talent has no color, class, or background, and that sometimes when the system can't protect us, we have to build our own justice. The phone rang. It was an invitation to speak at the National Technology Conference, the same event where Michael had been a keynote speaker for 5 years in a row. He wasn't even on the guest list this time. "I'll take that invitation," Kesha told Jennifer. "I want to talk about how true diversity in tech isn't just a matter of social inclusion, but of technical excellence. How many problems could be solved faster if companies stopped underestimating people based on their appearance?" Meanwhile, across town, Michael was opening yet another rejection letter for a job. His bank account was nearly empty. His luxury apartment had been sold to pay off legal debts, and he was now living in a small studio apartment in the suburbs. For the first time in his life, Michael Harrison was experiencing what it was like to be judged not by his talent, but by his actions. And the consequences were far more devastating than anything he had done to Kesha. "You turned an attempt to humiliate into a show of strength," Jennifer said, watching Kesha review contracts with new clients. "This wasn't just revenge, it was justice." "The best revenge," Kesha replied, "isn't to destroy those who hurt you. It's to build something so great that they realize how small they were when they tried to humiliate you." A year after that fateful day at Tech Corp, Kesha had proven one thing to Michael. There was a natural hierarchy, but it wasn't based on the color of your skin, your social background, or where you went to school. It was based on competence, integrity, and the courage to fight for justice when the world tried to silence you. Secure Code Solutions now employed 45 people, including many talented professionals who had been undervalued by traditional companies. Kesha had created not just a business, but a movement that proved that diversity and technical excellence go hand in hand. Michael Harrison tried to destroy a food delivery company because he couldn't stand the fact that it was smarter than him. He ended up losing everything and unknowingly creating one of the most innovative tech companies in the country. Kesha realized that true victory isn't about hurting your enemies. It's about achieving such remarkable success that they realize they were too small to understand your greatness. If this story of overcoming adversity and justice has inspired you, here are more stories that prove that competence has no color, and that sometimes the universe uses our greatest challenges to lead us to our greatest destiny.